Right now, as you watch this video, there is a war happening inside your mind. Not a war with weapons, not a war with enemies you can see or touch, but a war that is just as destructive, maybe even more so, because it is completely invisible. It is the war of thoughts. Thoughts about what you should have said in that conversation 3 days ago. Thoughts about what people think of you. Thoughts about the future. What could go wrong? What might not work out? What disaster might be lurking just around the corner? Thoughts about your past decisions. Thoughts about your mistakes. Thoughts that spiral into more thoughts until you are no longer living your life. You are merely watching it from behind the glass of your own mind, paralyzed, exhausted, and trapped. This is overthinking. And if you are honest with yourself right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe you lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations. Maybe you spend hours making a simple decision because every possible outcome terrifies you. Maybe you have a dream, a business, a relationship, a goal, but every time you try to move toward it, your mind floods with 1,000 reasons why you will fail. And so you stay still, you stay stuck, you stay in your head instead of stepping into your life. Here is what nobody tells you about overthinking. It is not a sign of intelligence, it is not careful planning, it is not you being responsible or thorough. Overthinking is fear dressed up in the costume of logic. It is your mind's way of keeping you safe by keeping you small. And 2,000 years ago, a group of philosophers figured this out. They developed a complete system, a philosophy of life, specifically designed to free the human mind from exactly this kind of suffering. That philosophy is Stoicism. And today we are going to go deep into the Stoic wisdom that will help you break the cycle of overthinking forever and finally, start living the life that is waiting for you. Stay with me for the entire video because every section builds on the last. By the time we are done, you will have a complete Stoic toolkit for silencing your overactive mind and stepping back into the present moment with clarity, confidence, and peace. Let us begin. Before we can fix the problem, we need to understand it completely. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, one of the most powerful men who ever lived, wrote in his private journal something that should stop you in your tracks. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Read that again. You have power over your mind, not over what happens to you, not over what other people do, not over the economy, not over the weather, not over whether your boss appreciates you or your family understands you. Only over your mind. Now here is the question. If you have power over your mind, why does it feel like your mind has power over you? The Stoics had a very clear answer to this. They called it the problem of false judgment. Your mind is not just processing reality, it is constantly adding layers of interpretation, catastrophizing, and meaning-making on top of reality. And most of the time, those layers have nothing to do with what is actually happening. Let me give you an example. You send an important message to someone and they do not reply for 3 hours. What happens in the mind of an overthinker? First thought, maybe they did not see it. Second thought, or maybe they saw it and they are ignoring me. Third thought, why would they ignore me? Did I say something wrong? Fourth thought, I probably came across as too eager, too desperate. Fifth thought, they probably think less of me now. Sixth thought, this is going to affect our entire relationship. Seventh thought, and now everything is going to fall apart. All of this from one unreplied message. 3 hours, and by the end of it, your body is flooded with stress hormones, your mood is ruined, and you have not written a single word, made a single move, or done a single productive thing with your day. But here is the truth. Nothing happened. A message went unreplied. That is the objective fact. Everything else, every story, every fear, every catastrophe your mind built was not reality. It was fiction. It was what the Stoics called a false impression. Epictetus, who was once a slave and became one of the greatest philosophers in history, taught his students one fundamental truth above all others. He said, "People are disturbed not by the things that happen to them, but by their opinions about those things. This is the entire root of overthinking. The event itself is rarely the problem. Your mind's interpretation of the event, the story it tells, the meaning it assigns, the fears it attaches, that is where all the suffering lives. And the moment you truly understand this, not just intellectually, but in your bones, everything changes. Because if your suffering does not come from events themselves, but from your interpretation of events, then you have the power to change your experience of life by changing how you think, not by controlling the world, by controlling your response to the world. This is the first and most important Stoic principle for overthinkers. Separate the event from your interpretation of the event. When your mind starts running, ask yourself one simple question: what actually happened? Not what it might mean, not what the worst-case scenario is, not what someone might be thinking, just what actually happened. A message went unreplied. That is what happened. The rest is a story, and you do not have to believe every story your mind tells you. There is one concept in Stoic philosophy that, if you truly apply it, will eliminate at least 70% of your overthinking immediately. It is called the dichotomy of control. Epictetus placed this principle at the very beginning of his most famous work, the Enchiridion, because he knew that without this foundation, everything else collapses. He wrote, "Some things are in our control and others are not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion. And in one word, whatever are our own actions, things not in our control are body, reputation, command, and in one word, whatever are not our own actions." Let us break this down into something you can use right now. Everything in your life, every single thing you spend mental energy on, falls into one of two categories. Either you can control it, or you cannot. There is no third category. There is no gray area. Can you control the effort you put into your work? Yes. Can you control whether your work is recognized? No. Can you control how you treat people? Yes. Can you control how people feel about you? No. Can you control whether you show up for your goals every day? Yes. Can you control the speed of your results? No. Can you control your own thoughts, reactions, and choices? Yes. Can you control what other people think, say, or do? No. Now here is the brutal, liberating truth. Overthinking almost always happens in the second category. We spin and spiral and obsess over things we cannot control. We rehearse conversations that have not happened. We worry about outcomes that are not yet decided. We replay decisions that are already done. We lose sleep over what other people think of us. We torture ourselves over circumstances we have zero power to change. And all of that mental energy, all those hours, all that stress, all that suffering produces exactly zero results, because you cannot think your way into controlling the uncontrollable. You can only exhaust yourself trying. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Confine yourself to the present, not the past, not the future, the present, right now, this moment, this breath, this action." Here is a practice the Stoics used and that you can use starting today. When a thought enters your mind and begins to pull you into overthinking, stop. Pause. Ask yourself two questions. Question one, is this something I can control? If the answer is yes, good. Stop thinking about it and start doing something about it. Action ends overthinking. Movement destroys paralysis. You cannot be stuck in your head and moving your hands at the same time. Question two, is this something I cannot control? If the answer is yes, release it. Not because it does not matter, not because you do not care, but because spending mental energy on things outside your control is not wisdom. It is self-punishment. It is choosing to suffer for no reason. The Stoics had a phrase for this, amor fati, love of fate. Not just accepting what you cannot change, but making peace with it so completely that it no longer robs you of your present moment. A storm is coming, and you cannot stop it. A Stoic does not spend 3 days worrying about the storm. A Stoic prepares what can be prepared, accepts what cannot be changed, and then turns their full attention back to what is in their control right now. This is not passivity. This is not giving up. This is the highest form of intelligence, knowing exactly where to direct your energy so that it produces something real. Divide your life into 2 columns. Column 1, things I can control. Column 2, things I cannot control. And make a vow to yourself right now to spend all of your mental energy in column 1 and none of it in column 2. This single shift will do more for your peace of mind than anything else you could ever do. There is a thief in your life, and unlike most thieves, this one does not take your possessions. It takes something far more valuable. It takes your time, your attention, your presence, your life itself. That thief has 2 names, the past and the future. Overthinking almost always lives in one of those 2 places. Either we are dragging the past into the present, replaying old mistakes, old conversations, old wounds, or we are projecting ourselves into a future that does not yet exist, building elaborate anxiety castles out of possibilities that may never arrive. And while we are doing all of that, while we are living in the past or the future, the present moment is passing us by, completely, unretrievably. Marcus Aurelius understood this so deeply, it appears again and again throughout his meditations. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present. Do not let your reflection on the whole sweep of life crush you." And elsewhere, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." Read that second quote carefully. You will meet the future with the same tools you have right now, so there is no point in suffering through the future in your imagination before it arrives. When challenges come, if they come, you will handle them. You have handled everything life has thrown at you so far. You are still here. The past is not a place you can return to and fix. The future is not a place you can travel to and secure. The only real moment, the only moment where you actually exist, breathe, feel, and act is right now. And here is what makes this so important for overthinkers. The present moment is always manageable, always. It is only when you try to carry the weight of every regret from your past and every fear about your future simultaneously that the load becomes unbearable. No human being can carry all of that and remain functional, and you were never meant to. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic writers, put it this way. He said that most of our suffering is not real, it is anticipated. He wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and that more of what we fear never actually happens. He told his friend Lucilius, "There are more things likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Think about all the things you have spent enormous mental energy worrying about over the past year. How many of them actually happened exactly as you feared? How many of the worst-case scenarios your mind constructed ever arrived? In most cases, most of the time, the catastrophe you imagined never came. Life surprised you in unexpected ways. You adapted, you survived, you moved on. And yet your mind continues to build catastrophes. It continues to draft disaster because it is trying to protect you. Your mind's job is not to make you happy, it is to keep you alive. And to keep you alive, it scans constantly for threats. The problem is, in the modern world, our minds are so overstimulated, so overwhelmed with information and uncertainty, that they treat everything as a potential threat, even things that could not possibly hurt us. So how do you bring yourself back to the present moment when your mind is racing into the past or the future? The Stoics would tell you, return to your body, return to your senses, feel the ground beneath your feet, feel the air entering your lungs. Look at what is directly in front of you. Touch something real. Hear something real. Engage your senses so completely that your mind has no bandwidth left for imaginary catastrophes. This is not meditation in the abstract sense. This is a practical emergency technique. When the spiral begins, when the thoughts start to multiply and cascade, drop into your body. Breathe. Feel. Be here. The present moment is where your life is. Every single meaningful moment you have ever experienced happened in the present. Every laugh, every breakthrough, every connection, every taste of real joy. None of that happened in the past or the future. It happened now. Stop giving your nows to thoughts about then. Start inhabiting the only moment you actually have. Now I want to share with you a Stoic practice that sounds counterintuitive at first. But when you understand it properly, it becomes one of the most powerful tools for silencing anxious, overthinking minds. It is called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Before you stop watching, hear me out. Most people think overthinking is the problem, and in a sense, it is. But the real problem is not that you think about bad outcomes. The real problem is that you think about them without resolution. You spiral through worst-case scenarios without ever landing, without ever finishing the thought, without ever asking the most important question. And then what? Stoic negative visualization is different from anxious overthinking in one crucial way. It is controlled, it is intentional, and it always ends with a resolution. Here is how to do it. Choose something you are currently anxious about. Maybe it is starting a business. Maybe it is having a difficult conversation. Maybe it is making a major life decision. Whatever it is, bring it to mind now. Now, instead of trying to push the fear away, lean into it, but do it deliberately. Ask yourself, what is the absolute worst thing that could happen here? Be specific. Be honest. Don't dance around it. What is the worst-case scenario? Now ask, if that happened, what would I do? This is the question that overthinking never asks. Anxious thinking circles around the bad outcome, but never lands on it, never examines it, never asks what would happen after, because your mind is afraid that if you look directly at the worst case, it will destroy you. But the Stoics found the opposite. When you look directly at the worst case, when you examine it calmly and completely, it almost always turns out to be far less catastrophic than your anxiety suggested. And more importantly, you discover that you could handle it, that you would survive, that life would go on. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we had come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." This is not morbid. This is liberating. When Marcus Aurelius faced the enormous pressures of ruling an empire, wars, plagues, political betrayal, the weight of millions of lives, he did not pretend the dangers were not real. He looked at them directly. He considered the worst. And then he returned to the present moment and did what needed to be done, without the paralysis of unexamined fear. Here is the difference between overthinking and Stoic negative visualization. Overthinking says, something bad might happen, something bad might happen, something bad might happen. It loops endlessly without resolution. Stoic visualization says, here is the worst thing that could happen. Here is how I would respond. Here is what I still have. I can handle this. And then it releases the fear and returns to action. Try this tonight. Pick one thing that has been consuming your mental energy. Walk all the way through the worst-case scenario, not to scare yourself, but to discover what your mind has been hiding from you. And you will almost always find the same thing. You are stronger than the fear. The worst case is survivable. And the life you are living right now in this moment is far better than your anxious mind has been giving you credit for. We have talked about the root of overthinking. We have talked about what you can and cannot control. We have talked about the present moment and how to return to it. We have talked about facing your fears directly. Now it is time for the most important section of this entire video, because all of the philosophy in the world means nothing if it stays in your head, and this is the great irony of overthinking. The very thing that traps you is the same place where the solution must eventually leave from: your mind. You cannot think your way out of overthinking, you have to act your way out of it. The Stoics were not philosophers who sat in ivory towers writing beautiful words about life. They were people who lived. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. Seneca was a statesman, an advisor, a writer. Epictetus, though he began his life as a slave with nothing, built a school that changed the ancient world. These were people of enormous, relentless action, and every single one of them taught the same thing about the relationship between thought and action. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have been idling too long. Throw yourself back into the game. Throw yourself back into the game, not when you feel ready, not when you have thought it through one more time, not when conditions are perfect. Now, today, with what you have, where you are. Here is the truth that your overthinking does not want you to know. Clarity does not come before action. Clarity comes from action. You do not think your way into a clear path forward. You act your way into it. Every time you overthink a decision instead of making it, you are telling yourself a lie. You are telling yourself that more thinking will produce more clarity, but it will not. More thinking about the same problem with the same information will only produce more anxiety. The new information you need, the clarity, the direction, the confidence, only comes from doing something and seeing what happens. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. You cannot sit in a room and think about bicycle riding until you are ready to ride one. You have to get on, you have to wobble, you have to fall. And then, through action, through experience, through real engagement with reality, you learn to balance. Life is exactly the same. The Stoics had a concept called kathekon, appropriate action, the idea that in every moment there is something appropriate to be done, and the wise person identifies that action and does it. Not perfectly, not with complete certainty, but faithfully, consistently, now. Epictetus said, "First, say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Decide who you want to be, and then do what that person does. Not someday, not when you are ready, now, even imperfectly, even with fear, even with doubt." Because the Stoics knew that courage is not the absence of fear, it is action in the presence of fear. Here is a practice that will change your life if you commit to it. Every morning, before you allow your mind to begin its spiral, ask yourself one question: what is the one action I can take today that will move me forward? Not 10 actions, not a perfect plan. One action. The smallest possible step in the direction of what matters to you. And then do it. Before you check your phone, before you read the news, before you allow the noise of the world to fill the space where your intention should live. One action, every day, repeated without exception. Marcus Aurelius wrote this for himself in his journal, not for the world to read, not to impress anyone, just as a private instruction to himself. Do not indulge in dreams of what you have not, but count up the chief blessings you do have, and then thankfully remember how eagerly they would have been sought if you did not have them. Act from what you have. Move with what you have. Do not wait for the perfect moment, the perfect resources, the perfect conditions. They are not coming. The overthinker waits for certainty that never arrives. The Stoic acts on the clarity that already exists, however small, and discovers more along the way. There is one final and perhaps the deepest layer of this conversation that we need to address. Because everything we have talked about, the dichotomy of control, the present moment, negative visualization, taking action, all of it becomes dramatically easier when you resolve one fundamental question. Who are you? Not your job, not your past, not what people have told you about yourself, not the labels that anxiety has attached to you. Who do you choose to be? The Stoics believed that identity was not something that happened to you. It was something you decided. And that decision, made consciously, made deliberately, renewed every single day, was the bedrock upon which an unshakable life was built. Marcus Aurelius was not born a philosopher king, he became one. By choosing every single day to practice the virtues he believed in, wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline, regardless of how he felt, regardless of the pressures around him, regardless of whether anyone was watching, he wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Your inner self, the place that no external event can touch unless you allow it to. That is your home, that is your fortress. And the Stoics taught that the work of a lifetime is to make that inner space so solid, so clear, so grounded in values and identity that the chaos of the outside world cannot find purchase there. Overthinkers often suffer from a fragmented sense of self. They define themselves by outcomes. If the business succeeds, they are worthy. If the relationship works, they are lovable. If people approve, they are enough. And because outcomes are always uncertain, always shifting, always beyond complete control, their sense of self is always uncertain, always shifting, always fragile. The Stoic alternative is to define yourself entirely by what is within your control, by your choices, by your character, by your effort, by how you treat people, by whether you show up, whether you do the work, whether you act with integrity when no one is watching. Epictetus, a man who had nothing, who was owned by another human being, who had every external thing stripped from him, could not be broken, because his identity was not in any external thing. It was in his choices, his freedom of thought, his ability to decide how to respond to whatever life placed before him. And no one could take that away, no one. When you build your identity on character rather than outcomes, something remarkable happens to overthinking. It begins to quiet, because the question, will this work out? Will people approve? Will I succeed? Becomes less urgent, less existential, because your worth is no longer attached to the answer. You are not the result. You are the effort. You are not the outcome. You are the character you bring to the process, and that is always within your control. We have covered a great deal of ground today. We have learned that overthinking is not a sign of intelligence, but fear wearing the mask of logic. We have learned the Stoic principle that separates the event from your interpretation of it, and that your suffering is almost always in the interpretation, not the event itself. We have learned the dichotomy of control, the most powerful tool for eliminating unnecessary mental suffering, and the practice of directing all of your energy toward what you can actually change. We have learned that the present moment is where your life actually lives, and that the past and the future are territories your mind visits, but your soul was never meant to inhabit permanently. We have learned the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, looking directly at the worst case, resolving it, and discovering that you are stronger than your fear. We have learned that action is the only real antidote to overthinking, that clarity does not come before action, it comes from it. And we have learned that identity built on character and choice is unbreakable in a way that identity built on outcomes never can be. But here is the thing I want to leave you with. The thing that matters more than any technique or principle or practice. There is a life waiting for you on the other side of your thoughts, not a perfect life, not a life without challenge or uncertainty or pain, but a real life, a present life, a life in which you are actually here, in your body, in this moment, engaged with the people and experiences and opportunities directly in front of you, instead of trapped behind the glass of endless mental loops. That life is not somewhere in the future. It is not available only after you figure everything out or eliminate every uncertainty or get every answer your overthinking mind is demanding. That life is available right now, in this moment. as soon as you make one simple choice, the choice to trust yourself, the choice to step forward despite the uncertainty, the choice to act on what you know rather than waiting for certainty you will never fully have. Marcus Aurelius, a man who faced challenges that would crush most of us, wrote to himself, "It is enough to do good now, even though I will not remember it." It is enough. What you do today is enough. Who you choose to be right now is enough. You do not need to have it all figured out. You do not need to silence every fear before you move. You do not need to think your way to the perfect plan before you begin. You just need to begin. The Stoics did not promise a life without problems. They promised something better than that. They promised a mind strong enough to face any problem with clarity, with courage, and with peace. And that promise is available to you, not someday, not eventually, but right now, in this moment, if you choose to take it. Stop overthinking. Start living. The world needs what only you can offer, and you have been keeping it locked inside your head for too long. Today, that changes. If this video reached something deep inside you today, if even one thing we talked about shifted something in the way you see yourself or your mind, then do me one favor. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is stuck in their head right now. Someone who is living half a life because their mind will not let them fully inhabit it. And if you are new to this channel, welcome. Hit subscribe and ring that notification bell, because we go deep here. Every single week we take the ancient wisdom of the Stoics and we bring it into your real modern daily life. Leave a comment below. What is the one thing you are going to stop overthinking about starting today? I read every comment. Let us build something real together. Until next time, be strong, be present, and choose to live.